Good afternoon, RGEA members and guests. Welcome to today's webinar, Essential Tips to Stay Prepared for Weather and Emergencies. I am your host, Daryl Davis Bulmer, and today we will also be joined by Tim O'Connell, RGEA's Executive Director, who will share the update from the association. Also, thank you, Tracy Eubanks, for your technical support today. Our primary presenters are Bill McKay, New Hanover County Emergency Management, Amber Smith, Senior from the Senior Resource Center, Holly Pilson, Cape Fear Agency on Aging, and Rosalie Calerico from AARP, the Coastal Region. These presenters will be providing information pertinent to the safety of older adults in light of the extreme weather, events of late, and other emergencies. They have important information to provide, including data that tells us what to expect about growth in North Carolina and the upcoming weather predictions for this summer. Due to the importance of this webinar, we may go over time, but we will definitely do our best to stay within the hour. Before we begin the webinar, I want to go over a few items. Each of you has been muted to help ensure the presenters can be heard. If you think of a question during the presentation, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom page. Questions will be answered during the Q&A period. If not, they will be answered during the presentation. This presentation is being recorded. We will send you the link to the recording along with the PowerPoint, any handouts, and the survey in our follow-up email. For those of you who have sent questions, we submitted them to this team already. Many have been incorporated into the discussion today. So without further ado, here's RGEA's Executive Director, Tim O'Connell.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It is great to be here with you. First, I always want to start these meetings by thanking you all for being members of RGEA. We could not do what we do without you. And I want to just highlight the example of who we've got in this meeting. But we're fortunate to have these individuals coming together. And it's collaboration that makes so many things work. And I want to highlight, we've got New Hanover County here, and just the importance of what local government does, especially in times of emergency. And we're seeing examples of that over and over again. So just fortunate to have New Hanover County represented so well here, and the collaborating agencies with AARP and the Cape Fear Agency on Aging and the Senior Resource Center. It's just great to come together this way. And RGEA is just grateful for these partners coming together for this program, which is really important. Right before we started, we were just having some conversations on everything going on in the world right now with fires and other, we're all still thinking and doing what we can do for Western North Carolina. So much going on in the world. And this is just a great time to consider how we all can be better prepared for those situations. On RGEA news, a couple things. First, the next Living Power magazine is on the docks, about to be mailed to you. So it's going to have all sorts of great information, including upcoming events that are in there, especially the ones Daryl puts on. So look for those. What's going on here for us is it is a slight reprieve, and with the legislature, they are off this week. We are not. We are working hard to make sure that you're represented down at the legislature. They will be back next week. The Senate has submitted their budget. It did not have COLAs or bonuses in that. We are going to work with the House to rectify that, but we are doing a lot of work on that front. Also, on the local government front, tomorrow there is a trustees meeting for Elders and the Teasers members. But if your local government, will be there at that meeting, making sure you're represented as well. Couple bills that I just want to highlight real quickly, and there's going to be some information coming out this later today, email with some links to Fast Democracy, our bill tracker site. But we've had a lot of questions about House Bill 92. That's the one that kind of short version, people call it the crypto bill. We spoke up at the House Pension and Retirement Committee meeting that we were not in favor of that. That bill did pass committee. That does not mean it's going to fully pass in this version, but we at this time we do not feel it's a need for a statute to address crypto for that. Other important bill is House Bill 506. That is one we are actually very supportive of. It's the Investment Modernization Act. That has a lot to do with the pension and how things are invested. North Carolina has run with a sole fiduciary model. What that means is one person, that person being the treasurer, has sole authority to make all decisions on financial matters. North Carolina is one of only 3 states left with that model in the country. And so the big part of that bill that's going to change is, if it does go forward, is that North Carolina would join the 48 other states and become the 48th state to actually go to an investment board model. So we'll have more voices at the table, more experts providing information on the investments. And that's been shown to result in higher earnings on the investments. So that's what we want for you, so COLAs can come more regularly. So keep an eye out for those. Look for the announcement with these bills mentioned in it. And we will be hoping that we see some of you on May 7th for Advocacy Day. If you have not signed up, you can still sign up, but we'll be at the legislature. And then also we're going to be down your way if you're in the Wilmington area. June 17th, we hope you will come for our conference. It's going to be a great day. Wilmington's a great place to travel to if you're not in the area, so consider making it maybe a weekend down there. But hopefully we'll see you all in person real soon. And again, thank everyone for this program. And Daryl, back to you.
All right. Thank you, Tim, for that quick update. And we're ready to get started. Bill, I believe you are first, so take it away.
Excellent. Thank you. I want to thank the RGEA for hosting this today. It's extremely important, and I want to thank the members who have tuned in today to hear this important information. As you see on the screen today, you'll see what my colleagues and I are going to talk about today. We're going to talk a little bit about oversight of emergency management and how local, state, and federal all work together on that. We're going to give you some information sources on how to get additional information about how to be prepared, how to recover from emergencies, how to deal with specific emergencies and those things, what's available to you in your community and how you can better access those things that are available to you in some of the community-based services. Spend some time talking about planning for an emergency and how to prepare, because the best thing that you can do to help us in emergency management is to be prepared for the emergencies that are going to come. Sometimes we get tuned into just what weather is going to deal with, but there are other emergencies that we need to be prepared for. The good thing about that is a lot of the emergency preparedness efforts that we do for one has cascading effects for other types of emergencies that are coming. And then we'll talk about some special populations and some of the needs associated with that. So we're going to talk a little bit right here about what is emergency management and what we do for our residents and businesses, because there is a little bit of confusion about what actually emergency management is. We're not EMS in many cases. Sometimes EMS is managed by the emergency manager in a local jurisdiction, but for the most part, we're not the people who are on the ambulances and things like that. Where what you see from emergency management is we are coordinating and communicating with people and building coalitions, and we'll talk more about that. We're going to talk about how we communicate with our stakeholder community and what our stakeholder community actually is and what resources are available to be better prepared. So emergencies, in the emergency management business, all emergencies start local and they end local. But here in North Carolina, I want to point out that we have a variety of different regions that we all work together in. And I'm actually in Region 5 in down here in the Cape Fear region. But as you can see on the slide here, New Hanover County or North Carolina is broken up into a variety of 15 different regions that we all work together, and they all have a regional director associated with that. And I put this slide up there because when I say emergencies start local, every locality, the 100 counties that exist within North Carolina all have an emergency management component that exists within them, and they all work closely with the state. And the state then again works closely with the FEMA, or this is what FEMA looks like today. I can't tell you what FEMA is going to look like 6 months from now, but this is what FEMA looks like today. And this is the way we work closely with our federal partners in associated with management of emergencies. So the emergency starts local. When the local is overwhelmed, then it goes to the state. We ask for additional resources from the state and some help from the state. And then once the state is overwhelmed, we do have a process with mutual aid between states. It's called EMAC, Emergency Management Assistance Compact. So we can ask our neighboring partners, South Carolina, Virginia, and that for additional resources. And then FEMA will come in and help us out as well. And then as the emergency transitions into more recovery, FEMA does step away and shift some of that responsibility back to the states and locals. So I wanted to highlight that about how emergency management is really, integrated amongst the state and the federal government. We are much more in emergency management than just hurricanes. We deal with a variety of different things that associated with that. But I do want to talk about some of the things that we're expecting for the summer here. Last week, there was some announcements came out from the agencies that monitor weather and those types of impacts associated with hurricanes. So the bad news is this year we're expecting 17 named storms, which normal is about 14. We're expecting 9 hurricanes in the Atlantic Basin, and normal is about 7, and 4 major hurricane is category 3 or above, and we're expecting 4 of those, and normal is about 3. So all in all, the Atlantic Basin is expected to be a little more active this year than previous years within the hurricane arena. Now, that doesn't mean all of those storms are going to impact North Carolina. That just tells you that the hurricane basin is expected to be a little bit more active than this year. And it could be anywhere into the Gulf or the Atlantic coast. But the bottom line is we need to be prepared. But what do we need to be prepared for when we talk about emergency management is not just hurricanes. And too often we get, especially here in the Cape Fear area, we get tunnel visioned into that hurricanes. But some of the other things that we're dealing with are extreme heat and cold. And we see that on a variety of different things. We talked about forest fires earlier. We see some of that in western North Carolina, not to the degree that we see in California and Oregon, Colorado, places like that. But we do have to deal with forest fires. Infrastructure impacts. When we have bridges that are taken out, like last year here in the Cape Fear area, we had the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge that was out of commission for a number of months due to ongoing maintenance. And we dealt with the traffic management associated with that and working with the sheriff's office and those types of things. We have ice and snowstorms, tornadoes, hazardous materials events, terrorism, utility infrastructures and impacts associated with that. But our bottom line is, like for instance, here in North Carolina, many of those 100 counties are one-person emergency management shops. Here in New Hanover County, we're pretty lucky. We have a shop of 9 people associated with that. But our main responsibility when emergencies occur, because we don't have the human capital associated with the response to that, is communication and coordination with those other entities that have the human capital to respond to those emergencies, such as law enforcement, EMS, fire rescue, and those other entities, local and state governments that have those resources on human capital wise to respond to those emergencies. When we talk about planning for emergencies, we take what we call a whole community approach. We really try to reach out and integrate our partners within the county to help us be prepared, because I don't know what other people need or are looking for in an emergency. So we want to take a whole community approach so we can be better prepared as a community to respond to what is inevitable. Because one of the, if you want to call it a nice thing about a hurricane, is we know it's coming. We know it's coming. We get advance notice. One of the questions that was asked earlier from someone was, when should I evacuate? Well, when you should evacuate is determined by a number of different factors. Where you are located, what is your zone that you're located? Are you prone to flooding? Where are you going to evacuate to? And a variety of other different things like that. But I will tell you this, when we're expecting a strong category 3 or greater storm, you need to be on the road 36 hours before impact. And the reason we say 36 hours before impact is because we do not want you stuck on the road during impact time. We want you in your safe place before the storm ever hits. So therefore, you need to make a personal decision about, are you going to stay? Are you prepared to stay? Do you have a safe place to stay? Or are you going to evacuate and then make that decision? And we're asking people to make that decision very early on in that. So there's a little bit of an overview on what emergency management does. And really what you see on a daily basis is just the tip of the iceberg about what we really do. We're involved with a variety of different entities and partners and deal with everything from the management of not the overall management of the port, but we deal with the management of the port all the way down to some of the smaller communities and law enforcement that have only one or two individuals associated with it. But I really want to stress emergency management as a resource for you, the members of RGEA, as well as citizens of North Carolina, as a resource to be able to help you to be better prepared for any type of emergency that may occur that you feel you might be adversely impacted by. And I use those terms specifically because everybody's going to be impacted a little bit differently. We have people who, if local government says we recommend that you need to be evacuating, we have people that don't have the means to evacuate. They may not have a car, they don't have transportation, they might not have the financial means. We help them during emergencies to try and get resources to help them to be able to access those things. So where do you get your information? This is a big problem for us in emergency management. It's a big problem for us in government because so many different sources are out there for information, and not all of those sources are very good for good information. There's a lot of bad information, and believe it or not, there's people that thrive on disseminating bad or incorrect information during emergencies. What you see on the screen are some places that people go nowadays because of social media impact. They go to Google, Wikipedia, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and anybody can put any kind of information on some of those things, some of those platforms that can be taken by people and run with those types of things. We don't want to see you getting bad information and making decisions that compromise your safety or making you do things or driving you to an action that may not be in your best interest. So we want you to get information from a good, viable source. So you got to consider the source. As you see on the slide here, false weather information goes viral and impacts decision. Where is that source? Okay. On the slide, you see a worst case scenario source that was put out by an individual in September of 2017 dealing with Hurricane Irma. And as you can see on the slide, this person created havoc in North Carolina because they posted to their site that North Carolina was going to be hit by North and South Carolina on September 11th was going to be hit by Hurricane Irma, when in fact it made landfall in the Keys and did not affect to a great degree North Carolina. So you have to really consider the source and look at this. This is one example. Here's another example of a hoax, a post-impact hoax, where people took a picture and photoshopped it and showed sharks swimming on highways in Houston. Didn't happen, didn't occur. But this is the kind of thing that you see, and people thrive on these types of bad information and that. So what is a valuable source of information? Number one, your local media. Okay, and I'm not going to get into a discussion about whether the media is good or the media is bad. The media is a source of information, especially when we're talking about hurricane-related things, weather-related things, things that are of emergency type nature. Your local media is available to you, and you have a lot of information that is available to you in your local media. Most of the television stations now have places where you can sign up and have information sent to your telecommunications device, your cell phone, your laptop, your computer, where you can get information real time about weather-related events, other types of events that are going to occur to you. And one of the nice things about that is it allows you to customize that. You can have it sent to your cell phone, you can have it sent to your email address. You can have it varieties of places that you can send to you. The Weather Channel, AccuWeather, Spectrum, they're valuable sources of information. You have to remember, though, when we're dealing with the Weather Channel, AccuWeather, and Spectrum specifically, we're not talking about specific information for a specific area. They cover a wide geographic area, so their information has to be specific, is not specific for your jurisdiction. Your local media is the best source for that, in conjunction with your local emergency management office. I would encourage everybody, as part of your quote unquote homework after this webinar, to go online, go to your local emergency management office, which is linked through your county, okay, and then look to see if they offer a notification service. Most local emergency management offices offer a free of charge notification service where you can sign up and get information sent directly to your cell phone or telecommunications device regarding impacts that may occur in your community. There are also hazard-specific notification sites that the National Hurricane Center runs, some other sources that are out there as well, and other vetted sources, one of which I want to mention is a system called IPAWS, Integrated Public Warning System. That is a system you don't need to sign up for. That is a system that we have available to us in emergency management, as well as others in the federal and state system have, where it's specifically targeted towards your cell phone. If an emergency is going to occur in your area, if the local jurisdiction or the state or the feds are using IPAWS to make notification, it will automatically send you information to your cell phone. It'll automatically send you information to your cell phone based upon a geo profile. So when the sender who is going to send that information out sets up the alert in IPAWS, they draw a geographic profile of that, and they say, okay, I want to hit every cell phone that's in New Hanover County. Okay, and they draw a map around New Hanover County, and they can set that out. So you can be a little bit more targeted with the alerting when you use the system such as IPAWS, where you can target a very specific area. We can actually go down to the street level with IPAWS and target specific streets. So we're not making notification to Castle Hayne, which is far enough inland that when we're expecting, rip currents or things like that along the coast, when we can target cell phones that are right there on the beach regarding that specific information. I do want to make mention of one thing, because there were several questions about how to deal with this, and some of my colleagues will talk about this. Most localities now have an access and functional needs or special needs registry. And this is a offshoot of several disasters where people were left behind. It got a lot of prominence after Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. Okay. And I want to make mention of this because we're all getting older, and with that comes a varying degree of capabilities. And I'm just going to specifically give you some information about New Hanover County, just so you can draw a parallel to your community. In New Hanover County, at our last census, which was done in 2020, over 12% of our population, which our population is about 240,000. So over 12% of our population identified that they had some type of disability. Based upon that, we're projecting that we should have about 25,000 people that could be eligible for our access and functional needs registry. And what that is, it's a system that we have developed here in New Hanover County, where people self-register and they ask if they say that they may need some additional resources and additional help if a high-profile emergency is going to come. I want you to remember that the registry is not just for those who have a visible disability. Disabilities come in a variety of different ways. Okay. Again, care needs to be taken when we're talking about the access and functional needs registry and your local community, that reliability or dependence on the government is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about having people be better prepared. So we gather this information, we help people become better prepared, and therefore when an emergency does occur, they are better prepared for it, less of a an impact to them as individuals, and then for less of an impact as to the government as well. And you can see the slide on there as the primary goal is to have better people better prepared for those types of things, and allows us in emergency management have a better understanding and awareness of the needs. So when we're doing our planning, okay, we know that some of those people need transportation issues, some of the people need food, some people need medication. Okay, so it allows us to be proactive versus reactive. And I encourage you to go onto your local emergency management site and see if you have a special needs or access and functional needs registry system, because most of them do now have, and information there is kept secure in that. So that's a quick, brief overview of emergency management and what we do and what we don't do, and how our mission is. And I'm going to transition to my colleague Amber now, who is going to talk about specifics related to the Senior Resource Center. On the slide there, you see some additional websites that are available. And this is all going to be distributed to you, so you don't need to copy it down. It'll all be sent out to you at a variety at a future time. There's my contact information. Certainly, if you have any questions that you don't want to wait for this to go out, call me or send me an email. Be more than happy to entertain anything. And with that, I will send it over to Amber.
Thank you, Bill. Thanks for that really good information that kind of helps you think kind of more globally, like from a federal, state, and certainly a local standpoint. And so I'm going to do a little bit deeper dive, like from a local standpoint and community-based services. A lot of what I'm going to talk about is local, specific to New Hanover County. So I hope this encourages you to look at your own community as well, because while things may look very similar, each community is also very different in what services may be available. So here in New Hanover County, the Senior Resource Center is the focal point for aging services in our area, and we provide a variety of different services. So Bill, the next slide. And what we provide is a multi-service component. And Bill, if you can switch to the next slide.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it to advance. It's
Okay.
give me a second.
Sure. While Bill's working on that, so our multi-purpose senior center focuses on a person-centered approach. And in that, you may not think of these as typical emergency preparedness or planning, but it really does go back to starting with your day-to-day. And so those are things of exercise and wellness, social engagement opportunities, your mental health. Information and assistance is a big one. Our social work services, mental health services. And in that component, as our social workers are working with a variety of individuals, we're also talking about emergency preparedness. And as Bill said, here in New Hanover County, the Cape Fear region, we do deal with a lot of hurricanes, but there's so many other variety of emergencies that we have to also prepare ourselves for. Fall prevention, even looking at individuals' homes, do they need a smoke detector? How do we connect them to fire services? How do we connect them to the Access and Functional Needs Program with emergency management? Nutrition services can certainly be an emergency situation for a lot of people. So whether it's a homebound individual and how do they receive access to healthy meals, such as home delivered meals or congregate nutrition. Transportation in every community, it's usually one of the top 3 concerns in a community is transportation, especially as individuals age and they may no longer be able to drive. How would they get to a shelter? How do they get to their day-to-day accessing doctor's appointments or accessing a senior center or places they need to go? So those are things that we work with individuals and actually provide too. And in an emergency situation, working with our local transit authorities or various vendors to be able to provide that service. And then I can't say enough about volunteer programs for specifically older adults, having older adults engage in your community. And this is really important. If you are passionate about emergency planning and preparedness in your own community, how can you help out? Some communities have a CERT program through their emergency management, which is a community response, emergency response team. You can be trained in that and how you can help in a variety of different emergency situations, helping deliver meals in your community, just being part of a disaster coalition and thinking about things that maybe hadn't been thought about in your community, but more importantly, how can you volunteer in various capacities in your community? So this really kind of goes back to it really is a continuity of care in all that we do. And it's important that we connect with a variety of different programs and agencies in our communities, because as you probably know, not one agency or department can do it all. It really does take a community approach to be able to make sure that we're serving people and serving them well. Bill, if you can go to the next slide. And how the Senior Resource Center plans and prepares for a variety of services and programs. Obviously, it is data driven, and we start with our master aging plan. So in New Hanover County, we developed our very first master aging plan that focuses on older adult services, caregiving services, and in this plan, this is a county plan that looks at how we can enhance older adult services. What are the needs now, but more importantly, what are their needs going to be in the future? And this is a community plan that works with a variety of different partners, and emergency plan preparedness is so important that it is actually in this plan. And from this, we've worked with agencies such as AARP, the Area Agency on Aging, Emergency Management, Fire Services, our local hospital, local law enforcement, and how we can help better prepare our residents for any type of emergency, whether that's developing kits, education programs, and it is also part of the larger county strategic plan as well when we're looking at key performance indicators, response times for fire services or local law enforcement, EMS. What is the response time for responding to an emergency as well? You can switch to the next slide. This is very important when I talk about communities and knowing your community. This is just a snapshot of where we are in the Cape Fear region. So this is from the state. There's a link at the bottom of the slide that will be sent to you that you can actually drill down to even your own county and look at your population profile specifically for older adults. In this Cape Fear region, this includes New Hanover, Brunswick County, Columbus County, and Pender County. And why it's so important that we're planning and preparing, especially for older adults and caregivers that may be caring for older adults, is because we have seen a tremendous shift in demographics. This is a nationwide shift. And some communities, such as New Hanover County, already have more individuals 60 and older than they do 0 to 17. And in the Cape Fear region, you can see in 2023, the estimated population percentage of residents in this area, 34% of those residents were 60 and older. And then if you look further, and it's what's estimated in 2043, that's going to continue to increase to about 41% in this region is going to be 60 and older. But more importantly, as you look at the older demographics, say as the age of 85 plus, there's going to be a tremendous increase in how we plan, how we prepare, how do we meet the needs of our older adult communities and caregivers. So this is why it's so important, as Bill had mentioned earlier, that we really focus on education, planning, preparedness. Each individual needs to plan for any type of emergency, whether that's weather related or non-weather related as well. And then it's important to also look at who's moving into North Carolina, who's moving into your communities. And as you can see in 2023, there was a little over 4,500 individuals that moved from other states or from abroad. And while that's important to understand is, while somebody may have moved from a different area, a different state, emergencies there may be very different into the area that they moved into. So they need to understand the area, that they've moved into, what type of emergencies are maybe more common than where they came from, and how they can better plan and prepare for that. And it really does go back, even connecting with your local emergency management or other entities that can help you understand how to be better prepared for that. Bill, if you can switch to the next slide. And so preparedness resources specifically in New Hanover County, really looking at your community-based services, whether that's a senior center or other entities such as the Area Agency on Aging. Emergency management, obviously, and in an emergency here in New Hanover County, it's a pretty big operation. They may activate the Emergency Operations Center, and in that, you're going to see numerous stakeholders in that working together. Of course, the access and functional needs or special needs registry here in New Hanover County, we do a call down of every single person that's on that registry. If it is a hurricane, we, as Bill said, we kind of know a few days ahead of time. So we have volunteers that will start calling every single person on that registry down to talk about what is your plan, what are your needs, and so forth. And then in New Hanover County, we have an extension of emergency operations called the Individual Care Coordination Center. And this is kind of the human service branch of emergency operations and helping individuals that may need additional assistance during an emergency. But also keep in mind when the Emergency Operations Center is activated, especially in a hurricane situation, there does come a point that we cannot respond to an individual if the winds get so high. So this is why it's so important, as Bill said, the recommendation is you need to make a decision early of when you leave, because if you stay and you're not prepared and you need assistance in the height of a storm, we may not be able to get to you until after certain conditions improve. Fire services, many communities, if I would be surprised if all fire services didn't provide this, but I can speak of New Hanover County. If you need smoke detectors or somebody needs a battery changed, oftentimes our fire services can provide that service for an individual. So it's important to also look at that. Animal services, planning for pets during emergency. Just as you plan for yourself, what are you going to do for your pets? And here in New Hanover County, we do have some shelter options that do allow pets. So you need to look at what is your option in your own community. Law enforcement programs, these are those day-to-day programs, but there's something called Project Lifesaver, an Are You OK program that does a daily check on individuals who sign up for that. And unfortunately, we do have to talk about active shooter trainings as well. And those are some typical emergencies that you may not often think about, but you can often request your local law enforcement if you have a group or an organization and you want to learn more of how your group or organization can be better prepared in an active shooter situation. Law enforcement programs can usually offer those trainings at no cost for individuals. I know there was a lot of questions about flood maps and flood planning, and there'll be some resources provided about that, but make sure you look at FEMA as a good resource for that. But also your local planning or land use departments have even more details about flood risk in certain communities and areas. They've got a lot of data that maybe FEMA maps haven't been updated, but local agencies are working on updating some of those maps. So that's important to look at for a local resource. There may be a disaster coalition in your area. How can you be part of that in a larger group when you're talking about planning and preparing for disasters? And I do put United Way in there because they are also a very important partner in disaster preparedness, especially when it relates to volunteering before, during, and after an emergency as well. And then one of the last slides, if you have any questions for me, certainly reach out to me. I didn't want to take up a whole lot of time because I really want our other partners to talk about, okay, how do you plan for a disaster? What are things that you need to think about moving forward? And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Rosalie and Holly. I think you're going to share your screen.
I just requested to share my screen. I think Bill might have to give me permission.
Thank you, Amber and Bill. And I really appreciate a lot of the information, especially because we recognize that while most of us are in New Hanover County, we certainly, Bill did give a lot of information for the state emergency management as well. And just as a reminder, we will be providing our handouts and resources to Daryl and Tracy so that you all will be able to have access to that information as well. So I am Rosalie Clarko with ARP North Carolina. I represent the coastal region of our state, and we're going to kind of talk about ways to be prepared. So Holly, if you want to move on to the next slide.
And I'm Holly Pilson, the director of the Cape Fear Area Agency on Aging. We cover Brunswick, Columbus, New Hanover, and Pender counties as the regional planning agency allocating the Older Americans Act funds to our lead agencies like Amber Smith with the New Hanover County Senior Resource Center. And being on the coast, we deal with lots of emergencies and disasters of all different kinds and work with our partners to respond to those.
So there are 3 simple steps to preparedness that we are going to go over. We want to create a plan, practice it, build an emergency kit, and be informed and create a support network. So in creating your plan, you want to be ready for family emergencies. And this handout will be provided for you all after the webinar. So don't try to feel like you have to write everything down or miss something. Ultimately, though, one of the things that is really great when you're creating your plan is also practicing your plan ahead of time. So making sure that everybody in your family knows where the safe spots are, where would you meet, and definitely choosing different meeting places depending on the type of disaster, right? Fire might look very different than if there's a tornado or hurricane. Determine the best escape routes. And then again, as I said, practice, practice, practice. So everyone feels safe and comfortable using the plan. Next one, Holly. So we do want to highlight for caregivers preparedness checklist. Always make sure you have your team built. Even when you are a caregiver and you have your team, you want to be prepared for that and disaster as well. Identify those organizations that can also be helpful to you when you're preparing for evacuation and or planning for disaster. Documentation is key. So you want to make sure not only do you have your important documents, but if you have important documents that your loved one might need, such as medical records. Gathering your supplies, plan to stay connected, and then plan to take care of each other. We have to remember that in times of disaster, we still need to be taking care of each other. One of the big highlights that we stress to when you're a caregiver is if the person you're caring for needs medical equipment that is going to require power, thinking about your transportation options, and then respite care if you have to evacuate and or what it looks like also when you plan for disaster response. Next slide, Holly.
And then, of course, you want to build your emergency kit. Everyone should have an emergency kit. Usually use a big plastic bin and have your non-perishable foods, or nothing requiring refrigeration, cooking, or water. Canned foods. I've said my daughter likes raviolis. We would have some of those in there. Granola bars, and always include a manual can opener. I don't think many people use those anymore, so it's nice to make sure you have one of those in your emergency kit. And water, you want to have 1 gallon per person per day and pet for at least 3 days. Store in clean, sealed plastic bottles. Need for water can, of course, vary depending on the climate and any special needs that you have. And then you want to talk about your medications. North Carolina law does allow for extra prescription refills in a qualifying emergency. You can reach out to your pharmacy for information as to which your medications fall under that general statute. You're to make a medication list and keep it with you. You can keep it in paper in a plastic bag, or you can put a list on your phone. Have at least 7 to 10 days supply of medication on hand for you and your loved ones you might be caregiving for. After the storm, find out what pharmacy near you is open online, and here is a map. If you undergo routine treatments administered by a clinic or a hospital, you'll want to check with them about their emergency plans and work with them to identify backup service providers, maybe in another part of North Carolina or in another state. Quick tips for pets. We had some questions about pets. You want to keep your leash in a carrier near an exit. Make sure you have the proper equipment for your pet to ride in the car. Carriers, harness, pet seat belts, and prepare a disaster kit for them also, with their food and their water and the things that they might need to make your evacuation run more smoothly. Ask your veterinarian for help putting together your veterinary pet's records also. And I know Amber mentioned in New Hanover County, they have a pet-friendly shelter so that people could bring their pets if they had to evacuate their homes.
When you are preparing your home, particularly this can be true of evacuating or staying, always make sure that you run your generators outside. Sadly, people have brought them inside due to the time of the year and have had the monoxide poisoning. So please, please, please make sure your generators are outside. You also want to make sure that your cars are filled up with gas and park in the garage if possible. Now, I know that's debatable depending on, if you need to get out of your house or something like that, but definitely make sure your cars are filled with gas. Cover your windows with hurricane shutters or plywood. Secure outdoor objects or bring them inside, and keep all trees and shrubs well trimmed. I know we had a few questions about should you cut down trees? And mainly I would just stress, and Bill might have something to add to this later, but if you're keeping them well maintained and trimmed, then sometimes that's not one of those things that you would have to cut down all your trees for, because keeping them trimmed and maintained does reduce the risk of limbs like crashing through a window or things of that nature. When you're informed, one thing that we really highly recommend, and we all probably, Holly and I were saying that we actually need to get ones for ourselves, is making sure that you have some form of like a weather radio at home, even a radio in general. Particularly one of the best ways of communication that was discovered after Helene was the public radio station. The Blue Ridge Public Radio was one of the main sources of information that folks tapped into to be able to get communication. I recognize that, for some of our folks who are hard of hearing, the radio may not be the best source, but when there's no power or Wi-Fi, the radio is actually one of the best places to get information. Also make sure that you know your vet recovery companies and organizations, and making sure you have all of your emergency alerts and everybody in your family knows the plan as well. And then visit your county emergency management, sign up for emergency alerts. Juno, we had a question about getting more information about where all the county emergency managements are. So I did provide a link to all of the county emergency management offices for this group, since you all are statewide, to Daryl. So that will be a resource provided after the webinar. Next slide. One other thing that we highly recommend, especially since hurricane season is coming up on June 1, but it's always a great time if you have not talked with your insurance agent recently about your policies. It would be great to set up a meeting with them to discuss, particularly as we have discovered from Hurricane Florence and now Hurricane Helene, most North Carolinians did not have flood insurance. So sadly, based on flooding, if you do not have flood insurance, you are going to face some repercussions. Now, we are not insurance agents, so I'm not going to get into what you need and don't need, but I would just say one rule of thumb, particularly when you're preparing for disaster, is setting up a meeting with your insurance agent to talk about your policies. Next slide, Holly.
I would just add there, someone asked a question about renting. I would have renter's insurance also. If you do not, be sure that you have that.
So we do want to just mention this, and I'm sure, I know Bill and Amber kind of briefly touched on it, but if you have storm damage, what should you do? Obviously, you want to contact your insurance company as soon as possible. And that is one of the documents you should have on hand is your insurance policies, because when you contact them, you are going to need that information. So that is a document you would want to have prepared with your emergency kit. And then, obviously before the storm, it's important to take pictures inside your house, outside your house. It's good to have video to be prepared in case you do have damage, then you are able to show before and after as well. And then, of course, if your home is uninhabitable, you want to protect it from further damage. If necessary, rent temporary shelter or go to a shelter. And then again, check with your insurance agent as well.
And I would definitely stress that taking photos of damage. I had 3 different adjusters after Florence. If I hadn't had that documentation of all those photos to show each one of them when they came, it wouldn't have gone as well. So.
Amber, did you want to?
Rosalie, kind of a piggyback on that. Bill had mentioned it, when we were speaking last week about scammers. After an event, we know it well here in New Hanover County, and fortunately, I think probably Western North Carolina has experienced this. This is a opportunity that a lot of these fraudsters and scammers come into communities and make promises, and so it may be a good idea to check with your insurance provider of who is a reputable source that can do some home repairs or tree removals, even at that. And also, don't pay money up front until the job is complete, because that's oftentimes what scammers will do, is they will collect your money and run before anything is done.
So true. Thanks for sharing that, Amber. And then here we listed, just for our 4 county, is the emergency notification sign up and how to register for the Access and Functional Needs Registry in New Hanover County. Columbus County also has one, and Pender. So I'm assuming probably most of your counties do also. You would just need to look up that contact information. And then, after the disasters that we've all had, these are wonderful organizations that kind of work on the cleanup and how to help people rebuild their lives afterwards. New Hanover County has a disaster coalition. Columbus County has one called Columbus County Connecting People to Resources and a disaster response team. There's the Brunswick Wellness Coalition, and then Brunswick County has a huge BOAD, which is volunteer organizations active in disasters that are working still on getting people help after our potential Cyclone 8 that came through about a year and a half ago. And then Pender County has a long-term recovery group also. So these are really neat groups to be involved with afterwards, either volunteering or if you're in need of some services from them. And then our last is mine and Rosalie's contact information if anyone needs that.
Wow, ladies and gentlemen, this was really good. We, members and guests of RGEA, we wanted to make sure that we gave you a jump start on thinking about how to be prepared for the upcoming weather events as well as other emergencies. And Bill, Amber, Rosalie, and Holly, you all did a great job on giving us that information that we need to help each of us to be better prepared. I learned something, so I'm sure that everyone else learned something. So make sure that you check with your own counties. They have similar services in place, but may have a different name. And I will send a list out that in the follow-up information that Rosalie shared with regards to all the agencies, I believe it is, listed in North Carolina. Um, Yes, I forgot to turn my video on. Thank you, Tim. And we'll make sure that we get all of this information out to you later this week because we do have a survey we want you to complete as well by Monday. But in the meantime, we had a couple of questions in the Q&A. Let me see. Rosalie, the one, I think you said you'd like to answer this question. I could not understand hours. Is that
Oh, that one,
something?
I honestly wasn't sure what the question was, and I accidentally hit on it, and
Oh,
I meant to hit the other one, so I apologize for the confusion on that.
okay. No problem whatsoever. I just want to make sure that we didn't eliminate any of
I
the
do know
questions
that
that were.
question came through though when Bill was presenting at the beginning,
Mhm.
so I'm not sure if there was something Bill presented on that might have had like an acronym or something to that particular question.
Yes, Bill, do you recall what that might have referred to? The person spelled it, it sounded like IOWA apostrophe S. That probably wasn't it, but
Someone earlier asked about I pause, to which
yes,
Bill
that may
brought up.
be
So I'm
it.
wondering if that was a small typo there.
Right.
Typo or so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be.
iPause is not a service that you as an individual sign up for. It's a service that we use in emergency management, as well as North Carolina Emergency Management and the federal partners use it. Not every locality can use it. You have to go through training and they have to vet you because if you recall, several years ago, someone issued a tsunami warning for Hawaii that was part of an exercise, and they accidentally hit the wrong button, and it went out to everybody who was in Hawaii at that particular time because it hits your cell phone and it caused mass hysteria. The same thing happened here on the East Coast, not with a tsunami, but with a nuclear attack several years ago as well. So they do control who has access and who can utilize iPause. Again, it's not a service you sign up for. It's used by the government where we create the notification and then we send it out and it automatically hits cell phones that are in the targeted geographic area that we desire to make notification to. So you may or may not get that notification uh, uh, about it, if you're not in the profile for the geographic area. So it's not a service you opt in or opt out of or anything like that.
Thank you so much, Bill, for that response. And I don't see any additional questions. We sent out the pre-questions early and they were incorporated into the presentation. Unless either of you have an additional comment, I just have some closing remarks and then we will actually finish on time.
I will
Anything
make
from the
one,
group?
if I
Yes,
could say one thing that came
yes.
up with documents. Oftentimes, we have a lot of documents. You have marriage certificates, insurance certificates, death certificates, birth certificates, social security cards. In today's day and age, sometimes it's better to digitize those documents than carry those documents around with you. You can put them all on a small jump drive, carry them to your shelter, carry them where you're going to evacuate to, and leave the hard copies of those very important documents in a very secure place. You certainly don't want to be in a shelter with all of those hard copy of documents that have very specific information, because as Amber stressed, there are scammers and there are scammers that go to shelters and prey on people who are in the shelters, and they have all your pertinent information. And the last thing you need in a hurricane or disaster is to have your identity stolen and some other problems.
Thank you so much for that, Bill. And this
And
is a reminder that it takes some time to pull all of these documents together. So start now, and be ready for whatever might hit because we never know when we might need, just to be ready to go in a moment's notice. So this is one of the reasons why we pull this one together because the weather events have become stronger and other emergencies have become more intense, and we want to make sure that you have the best information that we can give you to help you prepare for these things. So thank you all so much for doing this for us. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you also for coming. Just want to remind you not to forget to complete the survey when you receive it later this week. It's quick and easy, and we need your responses back by Monday. And before we leave, note the next Lunch and Learn webinar is scheduled for May 21st at 12:30 to 1:30. We will discuss economical travel and travel safety to help us prepare for the upcoming travel season. Bill, Holly, Amber, Rosalie, all of you mentioned how fraud and scams are so prevalent. We want to make sure that you are safe when you're scheduling your travel, etc. The presenter is John Green from AMBA, which is RGEA's Benefits Association. So without further ado, thanks again for joining us. And as always, the association stands ready to assist you in your retirement. Thank you so much, New Hanover team. Happy Wednesday, everybody, and stay safe.